It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out again. And hopefully we can get Charlie on this time. So I was just saying that today's guest is Charlie McCready. He's an alienation coach and he is brilliant. And when I say brilliant, I'm saying in the UK version because he's from the UK and it's much later in his day. And I just hope that we can get him on this time because he is so wise. There he is. Okay, Charlie, I see you. Yay. Actually, because one of our clients, not only one of our clients told us about Charlie, but yes, it
Hi
worked.
guys.
But also Brooke Olson. Brooke Olson had interviewed you a while ago, and we really like him. And then just meeting you recently and hearing you just boom, boom, boom with all this information, I thought this person can help people in our community because we always say that when an abuser doesn't have daily access to someone, they're limited to three ways to still get at them: money, kids, and the court. And money and the courts go hand in hand, but the kids last the longest. And so that's one way that they say, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to make sure the kids don't love you anymore. You're going to stay with me. So it's super common and a terrible tragedy. And so welcome and thank you. And before you introduce yourself formally, can you talk about what are the types of people in relationships who get alienated from their children?
Yeah, I mean, basically, most of the people seem to be empaths by nature. And there seems to be a trend where a lot of us, we have a little bit of a lack of confidence, we have a little bit of a lack of self-worth. We end up meeting and then marrying the wrong people. And that seems to be the theme that I come across all the time.
Yeah, yeah. You'd think it'd be like terrible people whose kids behave like this, but not true.
It's
So Charlie, how about you formally introduce yourself now? And then
right.
I'm going to pepper you with questions.
Fantastic. I look forward to that. Yeah, so very, very briefly, my name is Charlie McCready. I am a parental alienation coach. I've been doing this for a number of years. I'm a survivor of alienation as well. So I have a pact with my kids where I don't talk too much about my personal experience, but I've been through 10 years of what I would call pre-alienation. That's basically the lead up to the point in time that the gloves come off and full alienation starts. I've been through 15 years of alienation and what I would call post-alienation because it's an ongoing uh, relationship building with my kids. But I also had 5 years of very intense alienation with very limited contact and 2 years of no contact with one of my kids. And basically, what I do is I take something that's really, really complex and I try and boil it down for people to make it as simple as possible for you to understand some of the kind of the core ways in which it works and the really big things that you can do that can make a difference.
Yeah.
So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm thrilled that we found you because, like I said, it's just tragic, and so many of our clients are dealing with this. So, can you talk about what is pre-alienation? Because we always hear the term alienation, but what is pre-alienation? I always think about the grooming that happens beforehand.
Yeah, so you probably won't hear anybody other than me talking about it because I basically invented that phrase a little while ago. And it's just to say it's helpful to understand what was going on in advance of alienation beginning so you can begin to get a sense of how impacted the kids have been. So pre-alienation for me is you're probably still in a relationship and you're hearing negative comments from the other parent. So they might be saying, oh, you don't need to listen to what your mom says, or you don't need to listen to what your dad says, or they're the mean parent,
Mhm.
or they're the strict parent, or they'll be derogatory about us. They'll encourage the kids to say nasty things to us as well and support them in saying those things to us. um, and it's very subtle, and most of us just think, oh, this is kind of normal married life, we're getting a bit cranky, the romance is gone. And what's really going on is they're slowly getting the kids to side with them,
Mhm.
um, to some degree, in preparation of the day that the relationship breaks down, and that's when they swoop.
So it's like they already know that the relationship is going to end, and they're laying that foundation.
In some cases, yes. I mean, for me, it was a 10-year period that it was just this kind of relentless attack against my character. But other parents will see this as well. Other people see it for a shorter period of time. Sometimes it can be just a few months because an alienator is thinking, I'm getting close to the end of the relationship. I'm now going to start really getting the kids to side with me. But a lot of it's quite premeditated. They're often, because we're nice people, we kind of don't think nasty thoughts. The people who do alienation are quite insecure and vulnerable people, often narcissists. Many of them start relationships before they even, let us go, because they want the comfort of having somebody else there, and they definitely want to have the kids side with them. And so they start doing stuff well in advance of us. We're always on our back foot. That's one of the things we need to change in terms of the way that we deal with this, is learn to get off our back foot and constantly reacting, to start to think a little bit ahead. What are they thinking? What are they going to do next? How can I mitigate it? What can I start doing that's a little bit more positive?
Yeah. And that's one thing, like people are terrified of narcissistic personality types or abusers, but they're so predictable. And so
Very.
often when we get on an initial call with someone and we'll find out what's going on, and we're like, of course they're starting to sow those poisonous seeds and send those poisonous messages about you. I think back in my own relationship when when one of my kids was really, really little, and every time I would try to discipline him for something,
Mm-hmm.
my ex would say, "Oh, you don't need to listen to mom. She's just
Yeah.
cranky. You could just
Yes.
take it
There you
back."
go.
It would be completely undermining my
Yeah.
parenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
I would say, like, why are you doing that? Like, I had no idea what was going on.
yeah, it's kind of subtle, but when you look back on it, you can see just how damaging that really was to your relationship with the kids.
Yeah. So we talked about pre-alienation. What is like full-blown alienation?
So pe- people talk about estrangement as well as alienation as if they were the same thing, and I think it's really important for all parents to understand they're completely different.
Okay.
So estrangement is where we do things that damage our relationship with our kids. So we might be difficult with our kids. We might be aloof with our kids. Most of us are not, but we can do little things that makes our relationship a little bit strained. We need to be really careful when we get into a situation of being alienated, that we don't estrange our kids. This is one of the bear traps we'll come to. But alienation is basically where one parent is intentionally um, damaging your relationship with your child. And they are forcing the child into a loyalty conflict where the child has to pick that parent over you. They create a lot of negative narrative to our kids. And it's normally a fear based relationship. And what the child is doing is they're having to pick the parent who, ironically, is going to do most harm to them, because they're trying to appease that parent. They're trying to kind of reduce that. They're in damage mitigation, damage limitation themselves as a child. They know we're the nice parent. They know that our door will always be open. We will always love them. And so they turn against us in order to protect themselves, aligning with the alienating parent. And the way that we will see alienation manifest with our kids, so that there's three, it's like a spectrum. So on the one end, mildly alienated kids, they'll be a little bit difficult with us. They might be a little bit rude with us, but they'll still do things like they'll hug us and they'll tell us that they love us. But the time with us is a little bit strained. Moderate alienation is where that all ramps up a lot. So now we'll have kids who are being very rude to us. They're being disrespectful to us. They won't obey our rules. They will come in and say things like, I don't feel comfortable with you. I don't feel safe with you. They will go and hide away in their rooms. They won't engage with us. They won't tell us about what's going on in their lives. They won't tell us about what's going on in the alienator's home. And then we have severely alienated, which is at the point that they typically break off contact with us. So they might still let us text them, but to all intents and purposes, they basically cut us out of their life. And that's because And we see that happen at a point where, in essence, the child's willpower to stand up to that alienating parent who's putting a lot of pressure on them, they basically just break, and they lose that willpower, and they then become somebody who's just too afraid to have a relationship with us. And some of our kids become they believe the lies that are being told about us, and some of them genuinely believe some of the very nasty things that the other parent is trying to get them to, or convince them that of who we are really like, which of course we're not.
Yeah, I mean, and that is one of the hardest things for people to wrap their heads around. It's like I had this wonderful, close relationship with this child, and now they refuse to talk to me, and they're telling me all these terrible things that I've done that I haven't done.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's type of brainwashing.
It is a brainwashing. So, and I said this at the beginning, alienation is really quite complicated. And there are lots of little subtleties going on that are not immediately obvious. So, as a parent, your immediate reaction is that say it's the dad who is doing the bad mouthing to the mum. So the dad's saying all this bad stuff to the kid. The mum then thinks, well, I need to defend myself. I need to set the record straight. I can't have my kid thinking that this is the reality, because clearly it's not the reality. When we defend ourselves against the narrative from the alienating parent, this is the crazy part. We end up having the one conversation that our children never want to have, which is about alienation. So when we start pushing back and say, but that's not true, your dad's the one who's saying all this bad stuff, I'm a good parent, that none of this is true. What we're actually doing is we're putting our kid in the middle of the battlefield, and we're saying to the kid, you can't believe your dad, he's the lying one. But the kid's already quite convinced that you're the lying one. So
Hmm.
what you're actually doing is you're estranging yourself from your child. I know this is batshit crazy, this stuff. It's like you think you're defending yourself and you're helping the situation. Actually, you're putting the kids in a more pressured situation, because they feel, because they're afraid of the alienator, I've got to defend my dad because he's the person that told me in the first place, and if I don't keep him happy, I'm going to get punished. So
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking also that when a person, let's say a child, is hearing a narrative from one person, it's like, okay, you need to believe this kind of thing. And then they go to the other parent, and the other parent's like, no, 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 that's wrong. You need to believe this. The other parent is basically doing the same thing, saying, you need to believe this. No, you need to believe that.
yeah,
And a child, it's actually showing no respect for a child's critical thinking skills and ability to figure it out for themselves.
yes, and actually, what some of the psychologists have noted, that when children are put in this hugely stressful situation, because ultimately a child wants to have two loving parents, that's their natural state, and to be put in this situation where they have to make a choice, that they go through this thing called cognitive dissonance, which is they don't know what to believe. The two people that I trusted in my life are now telling me completely different things. So they one of their reactions is they actually regress in their mental maturity. And you will see kids going back to being, if they're 10 years old, they start acting like they're 7 years old, or if they're
Mhm.
7 years old, they start acting like they're 4 years old. And you see them going backwards. You also see them doing what they call splitting. And splitting is the point in time that they have to make a decision between one parent and the other. And this is very unnatural for kids. And they end up with these very polarized black and white views, where one parent is good, put up on a pedestal, everything they do is good, and the other parent is bad. And it's a completely unnatural situation for the child to find themselves in, and it's highly traumatic, and it's something that's very difficult to recover from later on in life.
Wow. Yeah. Um, why is divorce the rawest time for something like this?
So the rawest type of
Yeah,
experience for the kid.
yeah, yeah. Like we had talked about divorce being like really raw.
Yeah. So there's five big triggers for actually. If it just let me take one step back, and I'll come back to my five big triggers and why it's really really raw. We were talking about narcissism earlier, and it's a term that's bandied around a lot, but it's fairly common that the people who are prone to alienation have this kind of narcissistic streak within them. And to me, narcissism, it's not something that we have by nature, it's something that is created by nurture. And there is this trend that I see again and again and again and again that the people who become alienators have had trauma in their past life, and they basically never resolved that trauma, and they brought it with them into their adult life,
Mhm.
and they're basically very insecure, very vulnerable, and narcissism is a coping mechanism. So bullying, coercion, manipulation, being very boisterous, all those the ways that they control us is all about trying to control the world around them so they don't get hurt. And we also see things like they're quite infantile. So this is where their non-compromising nature comes from. So you're basically dealing with a kid. They're also really rubbish parents, most of them, because they're so focused on themselves, they don't have the capacity to really invest. What does the child need from me? The
Mhm.
reason I take that backwards flip is it's linked to why is the divorce so raw, because you're dealing with very insecure, very vulnerable people who are not going to change. And when you put them in a divorce situation, that's highly stressful for everybody. The empaths, we tend to be more stable, and we find it really difficult. Putting a narcissist, a childlike person into that situation is just a recipe for disaster. Just very quickly for those people, you're right. We have a textbook. We can understand there's so much written about narcissism. They're so predictable. If you want to understand what's going on with your narcissistic ex, look at narcissism, but also look at what happened in their past. What are the things that are going to trigger that person? How are they trying to make themselves safe from the world around them? And and then back to your question, the link with divorce being the rawest time, there are five big triggers for alienators stroke narcissists. So the first one is separation. When you separate from them, as much as they turn you into a character, they vilify you. They really they do hate you. I think we have to be really honest with ourselves. They detest us. And what that is we've now removed a comfort blanket that was us as a crutch for them as a person. And so they now don't want us to be with anybody else. They don't want us to be involved in their lives. They don't want us to be involved in their kids' lives. So separation is the first big trigger. Second big trigger for them, anything to do with courts. What happens in divorce? You go through courts. These are people who do not mediate because they want 100% of the kids, they want 100% of the assets, they want all the money. It's me, 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 me time. So now you're putting, and because they won't mediate, it's going to go to the courts. So now you're putting all the decision making into the hands of somebody else. That takes away their control, makes them feel really vulnerable. Third one, money. What's theirs is theirs. What's yours is theirs. They get their security by material stuff, houses, money, cars. They don't get their security like the empaths that we are. We're about relationships. We're about the child. What's best for the child? In fact, we'll sacrifice money for the kid. But threatening them with money, that's really hard for them, which is normally associated with courts. When you have a good relationship with your kid, that's another trigger for them because they're trying to damage your relationship. And what happens with all five, and I'll come to the fifth in a second, the way that they react when they feel threatened is they increase the alienation on your kid. So when you're having a good relationship with your child, they will go out of their way to damage that relationship. So you go one step forward, they take you one step back. You go one step forward, you go one step back. And when you're going through the whole situation with the separation, the divorce, and the courts and money, they go they make an increased effort to use the kids as a weapon against you, so that you will give, you will give them some leeway in, you might give them more money, or you might decide not to go to court. You need to be really careful about going to court, by the way, for future engagements with your ex, because sometimes you'll do more damage trying to get custody or to talk about child maintenance or things like that. You'll do more damage to the relationship with your kid than the benefit you'll get from going to court. Um, and the last one, I realize I talk a lot, but that's, hey, I want to share so much. The last one is, you get into a new relationship with somebody else. Now, a lot of people are not thinking about doing that immediately. Some people get into relationships quite quickly, but what it does is, again, it's unsettling for the alienator, because now you're introduced, what they're afraid of is you're going to introduce somebody new into their child's life who might have a positive influence or might have a good relationship. And what many of us find is that the person, the people that we start a relationship with, they're really vilified. So our kids
Hmm.
are told this person is, satanic. They are absolutely evil. They are awful. I mean, I remember um, my ex created this narrative about my current wife Emma, who was also alienated. She was a slum landlord. She was all manner of stuff. It's like, what? Where is this coming from? And the kids believe all this stuff, but it's a way of hurting us. So that kind of answers your question. Why is it particularly raw at divorce? Is because you've got so many of those triggers all coming into play for the alienators.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I just kept thinking of that word abandonment. That that's something that people like that fear the most. I remember my ex-husband actually told this to me beforehand. He said his biggest fear was
Mm-hmm.
abandonment. And so divorce triggers a sense of abandonment. And we often speak with our clients about this, and we'll say, when someone feels abandoned, they get really scared, but a narcissistic type doesn't want to confront all that uncomfortable feeling. So instead, it turns into rage,
Mm-hmm.
and then it becomes about like that black and white thinking, like I'm the victim and the other person is the villain, and I will take you down. They will scorch the earth. They will spend inordinate amounts of money. We
Yep.
talk about this in our book. Like, they don't care. Their judgment is impaired because it's like, right now I need to destroy this person.
Absolutely. I more and more and more, I talk about a single word: safety. What makes you feel, all of us, what makes you feel safe in the world? What makes you not feel safe in the world? And again, this will have a link to the parents who are experiencing as well as the alienators. So you talked about your ex, abandonment was a big stuff. So when you take everything you know about narcissism and you layer in everything you know about your ex, you now start having some quite predictable people. It's like, okay, anything to do with abandonment, he's just going to lose it. He's going to throw his toys out the pram. So that's an area to try and avoid. I call it prodding the bear. Don't
You say
prod
poking, you say
the
prodding.
bear. Yeah, yeah, because they will just come out and attack you. If the bear is sleeping in the back of the cave somewhere, leave it alone. Don't go and put a stick in its side, because it's just going to come running out of the cave and attack you. And that's what these alienating parents do. So we have to be quite quite aware of what we're doing in order that we don't make them angry. But but if you look at the world through the lens of what is making people safe, apply it to yourself and apply it to the alienators and everybody else, you suddenly start seeing that all of our behaviors are generally based around, are you touching an insecurity of mine? Am I touching an insecurity of somebody else? It's all because we don't feel safe. And
Yeah.
whenever somebody's been angry with you, you just say to yourself, okay, so you're not feeling safe, right? I get it. How to make you feel safe again? And you'll calm down.
Yeah. And this makes me think about how we talked about the impact of how our own parents treated us. How does that affect someone who has been alienated, like a target parent?
So our experiences growing up. So um, I'm gonna do what I did before. I'm gonna take you on a slight tangent, but then bring you back to answer the question. So we go off on what I call the emotional roller coaster. So, and when we're in the early stages of alienation, is particularly raw and sensitive for us. But we go through 9 key emotions. So the first one is grief. So grief, particularly if we have lost contact with the kids, and it's the same. It's a living bereavement, and what we're grieving the time we lose, the time we've already lost. We're grieving the time that we're losing today, and we're grieving the time that we think we're going to lose tomorrow. And it comes in waves like bereavement. The second one is guilt, because most people, back to the very beginning, we tend to be empathetic people. So we're nice people, we're caring people, and we're really good at beating ourselves up. And we always take a lot more blame for ourselves for stuff that's going on than we should. Key lesson, this is not your fault. The alienator is doing this, not you. But we feel massive amounts of guilt. The third one is, and this is particularly for women, shame. So other women round on you and they say, wow, you have got to be a really bad woman and a really bad mum and a really bad person. The fact that the kid has gone to dad's, and we all know dads are assholes. So what sort of a parent are you? And it's only because they just don't understand parental alienation at all. They don't realize that you're the victim as a woman. And so they're all really critical to you. So now you're feeling shame because the people around you are criticizing you. That also then leads onto isolation because nobody understands parental alienation. 6 to 8% of the population of the Western world is going through it, but typically nobody that we know is having a similar experience. And also social workers, CPS, DCF, lawyers, judges, none of these guys understand it. So we feel really isolated. We also feel powerless because whatever we do, the alienators will turn against us. So if you buy your kid a birthday present, they'll say, they're trying to bribe you. If you don't buy your kid a birthday present, they'll say they've abandoned you. So it doesn't matter what you do, it'll be used against you. That leads to injustice, which is a big one for parents. It's like, how is it that my kid is being turned against me? Why is nobody helping? We just feel terrible and really distraught, which leads us to anger, which doesn't need explaining. And then we have anxiety. We're really good at creating all these scenarios of what's happening to our kids, what might be happening to our kids. And we just make life really difficult for ourselves. And the last one is fear. And fear is feeling anxiety. And what happens is this conversation in our head starts because of the alienating parent. And it becomes a looping conversation. So as soon as whatever's going on in your conscious mind, whatever you're thinking about, automatically drops into your subconscious. It's got no filter. And your subconscious goes, okay, Lisa, you want me to think about grief, guilt, anxiety, fear, injustice. Give me a couple of hours, I'll get back to you. So it does. So now you're watching TV, or you're trying to do your job, or you're trying to sleep. So it'll wake you up and go, Lisa, you wanted me to think about grief and guilt and fear. Here you go. So here is more grief and guilt and fear. So now you're thinking about it again, and it loops and it goes around and around and around. But these terms, grief, guilt, shame, they're all unique to each of us. It's not the same emotion that we're feeling. And I did promise I'd come back to your original question, how it links in with our childhood experiences. So what's going on is the way that we feel grief is actually an insecurity or vulnerability that we've been bringing around of us for decades. And most of it starts with our parents and our childhood. So just to give you an example, if we have an aloof parent or a difficult parent, we naturally want to kind of have a strong relationship with them. And also these are the people who keep us, there's that word, safe. So we will do things with an aloof parent, we'll people please so that they look after us. That people pleasing then becomes our modus operandi as adults. So now, as an adult, we're a people pleaser, undermines our confidence, undermines our self-worth. step forwards until the present time, you've now got an alienated kid on your hands who's rejecting you. That's what your parents did for you when they were being aloof. So what do? We people please our kids. Now we're really mucking around with the boundary between you as a parent, because you're now afraid that if you do the wrong things, your kid is going to reject you further.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on is there's a battle going on within us related to our sense of safety, which is now affecting how we're dealing with our desire to rebuild the relationship with our child. What's also going on is, so there's like, just giving you two examples of it. Our parenting style is built upon stuff that we thought was good and stuff that we thought wasn't good. And the stuff that we thought was not good, we do a 180 on that. We try to ensure that our kids don't have that experience. So we don't want our kids to have the aloof parent experience. So we're really nurturing to them. Now what's happening is they're being alienated, and the alienators are not nurturing people. So we start feeling really bad, and this is where the anxiety and the fear comes in. We're creating all these scenarios in our heads about what an awful experience our kid is having. To some degree, some of that is correct, but it's we're feeling emotionally stressed because what we're imagining in our head our child is experiencing. So that's one level of stress. We feel guilt that we've failed as a parent because this child is now going through that experience. And then it reminds us of what we went through as a kid as well. So there's this enormous link between all the stuff that happened to us as kids and how we experience alienation today. And it's so important for us to understand how the past is affecting the current. And
Yeah, I'm thinking about
seconds.
rejection, like being rejected basically from a parent and then to have a child do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I talk about universes. So if we say there's the universe of Lisa and there's the universe of your kid, and every parent is locked into, I need to do everything for my kid because that's where we naturally want to put all of our effort and attention. And we have to start looking at the world through the kid's eyes and see what are you actually experiencing, so that we can look beyond, because it's full of coping mechanisms. We have to look beyond their coping mechanisms, their rudeness, their rejection, their abandonment, all those things, and just give them love and support. But in
That's
the universe,
really hard
yeah,
when they're being disrespectful and rude and rejecting.
yep.
So keep
In the
going, Charlie,
universe,
and then of course I'm going to ask
yeah,
you how.
yeah. So, but in the universe of Lisa, there's this epic battle going on within yourself, which is all your insecurities, all your vulnerabilities. And it manifests itself as triggers, blockers, and expectations. So the triggers are, my kid's just been rude to me. That's going to trigger you. But what it's really doing is that it's presenting you with a symptom, which when you boil down into it, it's one of your insecurities and vulnerabilities that is making you angry. So it might be, I'm not being respected. Well, why does not being respected upset you? Well, it's down to my sense of self-worth. It goes all the way back to some experience that I had when I was a kid. But so you've got triggers. You'll have loads of triggers. You'll have blockers. Blockers is where you have an emotional blockage between accepting the reality of the situation and so it is, the blocker is the accepting the reality of the situation. So your kid is going through something that you do not want them to be going through, and but that is their reality. You cannot change a certain amount of that. But the more you stay stuck in that space of, I don't want to accept it, but not accepting it is going to cause me pain, the more it's going to cause you that emotional stress. So we have to find ways of learning how to accept the reality of where we're at. And accepting doesn't mean you're giving up hope. It's just saying, as of today, this is what's going down. And then the other one is expectations, because we all created in our heads, and they are just ideas in our head. We all create all these ideas. What's my kid going to be like when they're 5? What's going to be like they're 10 and 15? And what's going to happen at proms and graduation? And what's it going to be like when they go to college and when they start having kids? And we've kind of created the first 30 years of their life and our role in it. And now what's happening is that what we expected to happen and what is happening is no longer in sync. And so that causes us pain. So we have to learn how to realign, reframe, and you can do some of the stuff in positive reframing, our whole set of expectations. So you have to get your triggers, your blockers, your expectations. Those things will give you a really good indication. What are all my insecurities and vulnerabilities? So in the universe of Lisa, you got a lot of work to do. You know, all of us have a lot of work to do. And here's the rub. You can't help your kid if your universe is in a mess. Because to help your kid, you've got to give them love and support when they're being really difficult. And you have to be in a very healed state to be able to do that effectively. Because if you get triggered, guess what? Where's your attention gone? It's on Lisa. It's not on the kid. If you're getting caught up on one of your blockers, where's your attention gone? It's on you. It's not on the kid. And the way you rebuild relationships is trust. And trust effectively means, can the kid talk to you about stuff? Can they just be with you and everything is stress free? So if a kid is talking about stuff they're doing with their dad, maybe the weekend coming up when it's supposed to be your time, and they're saying, oh, dad's planning doing this, guess what? You'll get triggered. Now the kid feels, I can't talk to you about stuff with dad, because the kid's looking at us going, you're not healed. You're not in a good space. So you will end up estranging your child whilst you're doing your best to rebuild that relationship. But you can't until you're healed.
It's so hard because I think of all of the grief that occurs along the way, and especially when you mention like the expectations, where people think, especially when their child is a baby, like everyone's thrilled when a baby is born and you get excited and you think about their life ahead and you think about your own childhood. And for me, it was like living childhood with each child again, and all that excitement about the future and how things are. And then to think, what if it's gone? Like the way it is now, it's gone. And the whole future, it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. That is the hopelessness aspect of alienation. And I think everybody goes through it. It's completely natural. We have, and everybody's experience of alienation is different. And one of the things that I always find hard to communicate to parents, they'll ask me some really simple question. How do I rebuild a relationship with my kid? It's like, okay, well, who's the alienator? Who's the kid? What's the kid been like? What's been their experience with the alienator? Who are you as a parent? What state are you in? You know, you have to look at the whole picture to be able to answer some of what seems like some really, really simple questions. So hope is one of those things. If you are, say your kids get alienated in their teens, and that happens a lot, in part just because the relationship with the narcissist has been going on for quite a long period of time. It's so draining on us that it's just broken down. We can't because we're basically what I would call regulators. We regulate the mood of the alienator to keep them in check, but we're doing that to protect the kids and we're doing that to protect ourselves. But we always do it by compromising what's best for us. So we keep the whole regulation side going. And I lost my train of thought where I was going to go back with the kids on that again. Yeah, hope. So if you're in a situation, for instance, where your kids are in their teenage years, what often happens is that when they get to like 18 to 20, they might go to college or they might go to university. They might leave home. You know, some of them even go and join the armed forces as a way of getting away from the alienating parent. When they have that physical distance, they're not being so monitored in their life.
Mhm.
They feel that they've got more independence. They feel, because when they're alienated from us, their permission to have a relationship with them is taken away. If they're found to have the relationship, they get punished. When they're not being monitored, they now feel there's a bit of a reprieve. Now I can reach out to that parent. So if you're somebody whose kids are like 14 to 16, there's a pretty good chance that when they're 18, 20, 22, and I know that sounds like a really long period of time for some people, but actually it passes very quickly, they will there's a really good chance that those kids will have a good relationship with you again in the future. And
We've
you should
seen it
listen.
with our clients and friends too, where it seems like it's completely over. It's been years, and then they come back again. Those 18 to 22, 23.
Yeah, yeah. There's no guarantees, and so basically, our job as a parent in that scenario is just to excuse my French, hold our shit together for that period, and also start doing some positive reframing. You know, if your kids are 18 years old already when they suddenly go through alienation, it can happen at any point in time. And you know, say your period of alienation goes on for 2 years. Well, they were at a point that they were getting ready to fly the coop already, and they were at a point where they're going to spend most of their time with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be spending, a lot of time on social media. So you're not losing the romantic idea of relationship with, quality time with the kids all the time. No, no, this is really not the truth. You're missing a chunk of time with somebody who's adolescent, really quite difficult, and doesn't want to be with you most of the time anyway.
Right.
And them flying the coop, because we know that's true as well. Them flying the coop is a natural thing, and what's really going on is we, as a parent, are not being given the opportunity to go through what we would perceive as a natural process of they get a bit older, we hold their hand, we kind of help them to fly the nest. And what's happening is we're just missing that kind of last bit of the journey, and then we rekindle the relationship once they've flown the nest.
Yeah. Wow. So, Charlie, we have to end because I have a client, but this is just the beginning of the conversation. I think I told you this is going to be more than one
I
conversation. This has been
hope so.
so helpful. I didn't even get to half of the questions.
Well, I'm aware I talked a lot, but hopefully it starts to create kind of links between, our childhood is so linked to the way we experience what's going on with our kids, and so much this is counterintuitive. But yeah, I'd really love to help more because there's so much you can do
Yeah.
as a parent that will make an enormous difference.
Right. And as you're talking, and as we did in our first conversation, there's such a parallel between this and legal abuse. So somebody's asking if
Yeah.
you have a book, and I also was going to say, can you tell people how to find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, which is charliemccready.com. You can find me on Instagram, also as Charlie McCready, I think it's one. I'm on Facebook as well, and I'm doing that under Overcoming Parental Alienation. So you can find me, and also on YouTube. But if you just put my name into any of those platforms, I'll pop up. And if you don't mind me saying, I do coaching. I
You
do.
can
I,
certainly. I
I
was telling you, Charlie, like I think we have a nice,
yeah,
you know,
we're very
we can
complimentary.
collaborate on a lot.
Yeah, we're super complimentary. So I do one-to-one coaching with people, and I also do. I have something called the 9-step program, which is an 8-week course that basically takes you through who are you as a person, what's the stuff you're dealing with, what is your child going through. So it's that universe is what do I need to fix in my universe, what do I need to help my child with in their universe, and just helping you through that journey so you come out in a very short period of time with a completely different sense of how you're going to tackle alienation, what's important, what's really going to help the kid. what's really going to help you.
So helpful. I saw a bunch of comments saying the same thing.
Cool.
So thank you so
Cool.
much for coming on. This is just going to be, this is the beginning of a beautiful relationship, I think.
But I'm so appreciative to have the opportunity to come along and have this conversation with you, Lisa, and everybody listening.
Yeah.
You're doing an amazing job. I mean, you really are. It's fantastic what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Same. All right, so we will catch up and plan another one of these, and maybe even regularly, because this is such a big issue with our people.
Yeah, I'd love to do a catch up or a regular thing. I'd be really happy to do whatever is most helpful.
All right, great. All right, well, thank you again so much for taking the time.
Cool. Well, thank you for inviting me.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye.